Welcome to the first draft breakdown that we're doing of this 2026 draft. We're going to get started with Mike Washington Jr., the running back who played his senior season at Arkansas, played at Buffalo and New Mexico State before that. We're going to get into some strengths, some areas for improvement, and finish with the draft grade. We're not going to get too opinionated on this video. We're going to do a live on Friday where we talk about all the players that we did the entire week. So if you want a chance to get featured on that, please leave your opinion on Mike Washington Jr. We're going to get a lot more controversial on that Friday show. But in the meantime, enjoy the video. Please reach out. Let me know your opinion of Mike Washington. Thanks for watching. Mike Washington's a guy that really broke out his senior season, the one season that he spent at Arkansas. We have the stats up on the screen. You take a look. He spent 3 at Buffalo, 1 at New Mexico State. The stats don't really jump off the screen. Completely changed the story when he transferred to Arkansas. He was very productive in 2025 at Arkansas. He finished with 1,000 yards plus, 8 rushing touchdowns, 6.4 yards per carry. Also very productive as a receiver. We'll talk about the receiving in a little bit. I want to get started with the acceleration that Mike Washington Jr. has. As soon as this guy gets into the 10-yard range, he can just completely step on the gas and hit that third gear and consistently add yards to the end it runs. And it's not just the acceleration into the second level. That's a massive part of it for sure, having that athletic ability. He also does a really good job of understanding how to attack angles into the second level. We saw that against Texas A&M right here, one of the best defenses in the country in 2025. And you can take a look. This A&M safety has an angle on Mike Washington. That angle completely gets erased because of the ability that he has to just completely blow by him, and he ends up catching up for him. But very consistently, when Mike Washington gets into the 10-yard range, when he has a head full of steam, that's when we talk about him being one of the fastest running backs in this 26 class. I think at the combine, we're not going to necessarily get blown away by the 10-yard split, those first 10 yards. I think it'll be pretty good, but I think when we actually talk about the whole 40-yard dash, I think he's going to test with some of the best running backs in this upcoming draft class. So I love the acceleration that Mike Washington Jr. has. However, that only can kind of show up if he gets into the second level. What gets him into the second level to begin with is the lateral agility that he has. This dude changes direction and strings cuts together real easily, and we'll see that on this play right here, how he does that. And then we see that acceleration take over. That same one that showed up before when he had an open lane and could just hit it shows up when he kind of has to make a move or two to kind of find some more space in the open field. Really like that. And then, of course, having that acceleration in the back pocket. That's kind of the upside. This guy can hit a home run at any given point because of that. Like we said, that 10 to 40-yard range, how fast he is in that regard, he's always going to have that ability to hit a home run. But he gives himself more opportunities as well because of that lateral agility. We're going to talk about the vision in a little bit. I think it's kind of a mixed bag, but on this play right here, certainly does a good job seeing that cutback lane to his left here without directly looking at it. He's going to press that gap and then all of a sudden have that lateral agility just completely bail and then turn this into a real big game because of that acceleration again. I think he does a real good job of using that lateral agility to find space into the second level without really getting caught dancing. You could just take a look. Everything's just real downhill with him. He's consistently attacking the line of scrimmage and still has that ability to bounce runs to the outside because of that lateral agility. So we saw that time and time again throughout this 2025 season here on a running back draw or a halfback draw to Mike Washington. But also, I really like the upside of Mike Washington Jr. as a contact balance runner, the physicality that he has. And at 6'2", 220, certainly a big running back. There's no doubt about that. But also that same acceleration is going to play into the contact balance and the physicality that he runs it with. Watch him get into the second level here, again, because of that acceleration. And then watch how he just punishes Taft, the safety, right there for a touchdown against Texas. We'll watch that one more time. This is really the upside to me. The acceleration, sure, when he turns that into a real big gain like we saw before, and, him not getting tackled because he's blowing past everybody. When you do have him in close quarters and he's moving like this at 20 yards downfield, that's when he's really at his fastest. That's when he's at his most powerful, being a 220-pound running back. Real big frame that he has. And we saw some flashes of the contact balance throughout the 2025 season. So it's a really interesting conversation. I'm going to talk about this more on Friday when we do the live stream. But, at 6'2", he's a lot taller, which means he has a higher center of gravity. A lot of running backs, we get real excited about the 5'9" guys because of how naturally low they are to the ground and that low pad level and that low center of gravity. They really use that leverage well. Mike Washington Jr. at 6'2" doesn't have that natural low pad level. However, I do think he's a very powerful running back when you're trying to tackle him on an angle. We really talk about those powerful thighs just keep churning. We see that right here when this, I think this is all, or Texas A&M again, when he's trying to tackle him from an angle. He's very powerful in that regard. I think you'll see some situations where he gets caught squared up. Usually that's where those guys that are a bit longer, you don't really see him as powerful as you do on some of these clips here because these guys are trying to tackle him from angles. Really powerful when you're trying to get him from an angle, I think. And we see that consistently, just really runs with a mean mentality. Again, at 6'2", 220, he's a very solid running back in the sense that, he's a big guy. There's no doubt about that. Now we're going to talk about Mike Washington Jr. as a receiver. He was very productive in 2025 as a receiver, 226 receiving yards. Didn't really have a track record of production as a receiver throughout his college football career, but at Arkansas definitely succeeded in that in 2025. And I'm going to kind of deviate from what the other draft people are saying about Mike Washington Jr. I see a lot of people kind of list the receiving ability as a negative for Mike Washington. They don't think he's a real 3-down back yet. I don't really agree with that. I think the point that they bring up is they only see swing routes and wheel routes and, maybe halfback angles on the highlight tape. They don't see a lot of halfback options, I guess, which I'm just not going to blame a running back for the system that he's in. I don't know if he can do it. I'm not going to hold that against him because he wasn't asked to do that at Arkansas. I guess that's a conversation you can have, but I just don't think that. I think the skills that we saw as a running back also translate to him as a pass catcher. Again, that short area quickness and that acceleration. We're going to see him on a wheel route in a little bit, just blow past everybody. But also the numbers don't lie. I didn't really see any drops on the highlight on the full games that I watched, maybe a single one. But I really do like Mike Washington's upside as a receiving back because did it in 2025. The numbers don't lie, I think, in that regard. And then also at 6'2", he's a big target to just kind of get the ball out to. Makes it easier on quarterbacks. So I do like Mike Washington Jr.'s receiving ability. Also really like his upside as a pass protector. Here's one thing that I do think that the services were right about. I think that he's got a lot of upside as a pass protector because of that physicality that we talked about. It's just the technique, I don't know what it is. If you're a running back coach and you coach a lot more pass protection, please let me know. But it just kind of seems like that same aggressiveness that we see him run the ball with doesn't really show up as a pass protector. And it isn't that, he's lazy or anything like that. I just think it's a bit more of a technique thing, and we saw that against Tennessee right here. This is a good play by the quarterback, Taylor Green, just kind of bailing on this, but just watch this guy off the edge. Mike Washington, a lot of times, instead of just attacking him, he just kind of gets caught with his feet, just kind of like almost like he's in pass protection like a lineman where he's letting him to make his move. I think if he was a bit more aggressive, he would have been able to make a block on this edge rusher and would have bought the quarterback a lot more time. And, that play was messed up to begin with, but there were a lot of plays throughout the full games that I watched with Mike Washington where it's kind of a similar thing. And I said the vision and the patience were kind of a mixed bag. I think he's a very patient back for the most part. I just saw some lapses in the vision show up on the film every now and then. We'll see that on this draw right here. You could just kind of see, instead of taking this to where all that green grass is right to the right, he's going to bounce to the left and get caught in the backfield for a loss on that one. That one wasn't as bad. I think this was one on outside zone here. Just because it's outside zone doesn't mean you have to take this all the way to the outside to the sideline. And instead of hitting this cutback that's there right away, he's going to keep bouncing this. You can kind of see it developing now, but even now, he's just accelerating to the outside instead of hitting that gap right there that's right in front of him. And he's just going to keep bouncing this, and this goes for a loss again. And I really do think he had a big gain. He kind of left some yards on the table on this play, in my opinion. It wasn't something that showed up on every play. I'll tell you that right now. I think a lot of those lateral agility clips that we watched at the beginning, I didn't really talk about it, but he's very patient, and he had a lot of good vision into the second level. I just thought every now and then, maybe it's a bit more of a consistency thing, and this was the worst example, but it's also one play, not getting too caught up in it. And I'll wrap up giving my final thoughts on we-draft.com, kind of a place to store all your draft evaluations. He's got a second round grade according to the community right now. I'm going to go ahead and give him a third round grade. I think he's on the fringe between day 2 and day 3. I'm really excited to watch some of the other running backs, and maybe I change my opinion as I watch more of them, but I'm going to do the same. I'm going to just put in the stuff that I talked about, the acceleration, the lateral agility, and the frame or I'll put the receiving ability because I really do think he's got upside as a receiving back. And I'll put the pass protection in for now, and I say the contact balance just because he kind of has a natural high pad level, and I'll just save that right there. But yeah, you guys let me know what you think about Mike Washington Jr. Please check out we-draft.com. Let me know in the comments. We're going to talk a lot about this guy on Friday. Really excited to kind of give a bit more of an opinionated take then. But yeah, in the meantime, you guys let me know what you think about him. Thanks for watching.